The war had ended, or so they told us. The skies were quiet now. No more burning trails of plasma fire streaking across the horizon. No more thunder of orbital cannons shaking the earth beneath our feet. Yet silence did not bring peace. Silence only made the ghosts louder. Every city I walked through was a graveyard, every ruin a reminder of what had been lost. For me, the war had taken more than comrades, more than home. It had taken Lyra, my daughter. They said her transport was caught in a plasma strike during the retreat from Valen Ridge. No survivors, no remains to bury, just smoke and twisted metal. I had convinced myself she was gone, that her small voice would never call me Dad again. Grief hollowed me out, and in that emptiness I filled my days with routine, cleaning weapons, patching walls, staring at the scars of a war that should have killed me, too. That night was no different, until I heard the knock. A hesitant, uneven rapping against the battered steel of my door. Instinct drove me to my rifle, heart hammering as I opened it. What stood before me was no human. A Velari soldier, armor scorched, body failing, eyes heavy with pain. And in his arms, wrapped in torn combat cloth, something stirred. My hand shook as I pulled back the cloth. Lyra's face looked up at me, thin but alive, her lips parting to whisper one word that shattered my world. Dad. My first instinct was to shoot. The rifle was already pressed tight against my shoulder, my finger curling on the trigger. The Velari were monsters in my mind, executioners of everything I loved. I had seen them tear through human lines without hesitation, their claws and plasma blades dripping with the blood of friends. Now one of them stood in my doorway, close enough to kill me, and yet he didn't strike. He just swayed there, his arms trembling under the weight of the bundle. When I pulled the cloth back, my world cracked open. Lyra. Her hair was matted, her skin pale, her frame fragile from hunger and fear, but it was her. Those eyes, my wife's eyes, blinked up at me. For a heartbeat I thought I was hallucinating, that grief had finally broken my mind. But then she reached out with a small, shaking hand and whispered, "Dad." I dropped the rifle. My knees nearly buckled. I pulled her close, holding her so tightly I was afraid I might break her. The soldier swayed again, blood staining my floor as he coughed. His voice rasped in broken Terran words, almost pleading. "Saved, huh? Yours." I should have killed him. My training, my hatred, demanded it. But as I looked at him, at the wounds he bore, at the risk he had taken, I couldn't. I owed him the impossible gift he had given me. Against every instinct carved by war, I dragged him inside, into the only shelter I had left. He told me his name was Kale, though the way it rolled from his tongue sounded heavier, more guttural. At first, I didn't care. To me, he was still an enemy bleeding out on my floor, a reminder of every horror his people had unleashed. But Lyra sat by his side as though he were a wounded animal, holding a damp cloth to his burns, whispering comfort as if he belonged. I wanted to pull her away, to remind her of who he was, but the truth was harder to ignore. Without him, she wouldn't even be here. For days, he drifted in and out of fever, his body struggling against injuries and infection. He spoke fragments of his language, words I didn't understand, until finally, broken Terran slipped through. He told me she had been taken alive, a prize of war, stolen rather than killed. The thought made me sick. He had risked everything. His rank, his people, his life, to smuggle her out. Every burn across his chest, every gash on his arms was proof of the fight he endured. I hated that I needed him. I hated more that Lyra trusted him. But I couldn't deny what I saw when she smiled faintly after eating the strange ration paste he offered. My daughter hadn't smiled in weeks. She looked at him not with fear, but with fragile gratitude. The war had taught me to see the Velari as beasts. Yet here was one who had betrayed his own kind, for my child. We couldn't stay in the city. Patrols were everywhere, our soldiers searching for deserters, their soldiers hunting traitors. Any of them would kill Kale on sight, and Lyra would be dragged into the mess again. So we left. I carried her on my back, her thin arms wrapped around my neck, while Kale limped beside us, leaning on a makeshift crutch carved from debris. Together we slipped into the forests, places once lush and alive, now nothing but blackened husks. The trees stood like ghosts, charred skeletons clawing at the sky. The ground was a patchwork of ash and glass where plasma fire had scorched it beyond recognition. Every few miles, we stumbled across the remnants of battles past, helmets cracked open, bones bleached, weapons rusting where soldiers had fallen. Human and Vaylari alike. Death didn't care for sides. At night, the silence was suffocating, broken only by Lyra's soft breathing and Kale's low voice. He would whisper stories from his world, his strange words carrying images of oceans that glowed in the dark and skies filled with silver storms. Lyra listened with wide eyes, clinging to every word. For her, those stories were an escape from nightmares. For me, they were a test of will. I kept my rifle across my lap, watching him, waiting for a sign of betrayal. But when Lyra laughed, a faint, trembling laugh I thought I'd never hear again, I felt my resolve weaken. The sound didn't come from my stories. It came from his. They found us on the 7th night. I should have known the forest wouldn't hide us forever. The first warning was the faint hum of plasma rifles charging in the distance, followed by the eerie shimmer of their armor glinting under the fractured moonlight. Vaylari hunters. Their voices cut through the trees like knives, sharp and guttural, calling Kale's name. They wanted him executed for desertion, and they wanted Lyra back. We ran. Branches whipped at my face, roots clawed at my boots, and Lyra clung to me with desperate strength. Kale stumbled but refused to slow down, teeth clenched, pushing himself past the pain. The air lit up with streaks of plasma, searing through dead bark and showering us with sparks. I turned, firing into the dark, rail slugs sparking off their shields. It bought us seconds, barely enough. One of them broke through, charging me with a blade of searing light. I didn't have time to reload. His weapon rose high, and then Kale slammed into him, the two of them crashing into the dirt. They fought like wild beasts, snarling, clawing, blood flying with every strike. Kale's body was a blur of desperation, his fists pounding until bones snapped and the hunter went still. He collapsed beside the corpse, chest heaving, his hands shaking. I stood there, rifle ready, breath ragged, staring at the alien who had just killed his own kind to protect us. In that moment, he wasn't my enemy. He was my shield. By the time we reached the borderlands, dawn was bleeding into the sky. The air smelled of iron and smoke, the ruins of old outposts still smoldering in the distance. Human banners fluttered on shattered walls, a reminder that this strip of land was ours again, but only just. Relief surged through me, but it died the instant the sentries saw Kale. Dozens of rifles leveled on him at once. Soldiers barked orders, shouting for me to step aside. They didn't care that he was limping, that his armor was torn and his blood stained every step. To them, he was the enemy. They didn't see the man who had carried Lyra when I was too exhausted, or who had stood between her and death in the forest. All they saw was the monster we'd been trained to kill on sight. Their commander, a hard-eyed woman with silver scars down her cheek, demanded his execution. She said the safety of the outpost couldn't be risked. I felt the weight of every rifle on me, but I didn't move. I planted myself in front of Kale, rifle raised, not at him, but at my own people. My voice cracked but held firm. He saved my daughter. If he dies, then everything we claim to stand for dies with him. The silence was unbearable. Finally, the commander lowered her weapon with a curse. His life is yours to answer for, she spat. If he betrays us, your daughter pays the price. Months have passed since that day at the border. The war still rages beyond these hills, but here, in the quiet shadow of the outpost, life feels different. Lyra has color in her cheeks again. She runs in the yard with other children, laughing in a way I once thought I'd never hear. Sometimes I watch her from a distance, afraid if I blink too long, she'll vanish back into the fire I pulled her from. Kale remains close. He is no longer the broken soldier I dragged through the forest. He mends armor for our scouts, tends to the wounded when medics are overwhelmed, and, against every regulation, he teaches Lyra words from his language. She repeats them with pride, her voice carrying alien syllables as though they were meant to be hers all along. It unsettles some of the soldiers, but I can't bring myself to stop her. She trusts him completely, and, God help me, so do I. Yet the war outside doesn't stop. There are whispers of Vaylari reprisals, of fleets regrouping. Kale listens to the rumors with eyes that hold more sorrow than fear. One night, as we watched Lyra sleep, he said quietly, "I failed once. I will not fail her again." His voice was steady, almost human. I thought the war had taken everything from me. Instead, it returned my daughter and gave me something I never expected. Proof that even in the darkest battles, compassion could forge hope stronger than hate.